G'day! Welcome to True Blue History. I'm Adam Bloom. Today's special guest is former SASR and 2nd Commando veteran Sergeant Peter Rutland. Peter served in the ADF from 1989 to 2017 with deployments to Cambodia, Iraq, East Timor and Afghanistan. On the 21st of June 2010, Peter's life changed forever. He was involved in a Black Hawk helicopter crash where 3 Australian Commandos were killed, 7 wounded in action, and 1 US soldier killed. And Peter has joined us today to talk about his career and his life after service. Hi, Pete. Thanks for joining us on the show.
Hey, mate. Glad to be here.
No, Pete, thank you, mate. It's an absolute honour and a privilege to have you on True Blue History. So, Pete, can you tell us a little bit about Peter as a young fella? Where did you grow up, and what was school like, and what hobbies did you have?
Okay, I was born in Northam, which is a small country town outside of Perth. It's about 100 odd kilometres from Perth, east of Perth. Was born there, spent my early years there, then went to Perth, did my schooling in Perth. I grew up with my grandmother, so I was sort of adopted out by my mum and dad. My grandmother adopted me, and I pretty much stayed with her my entire child life. My grandfather was a World War II veteran who died before I was born. So I spent most of my early years as a legacy kid, which was pretty awesome.
So when did you decide you were going to join the army, Pete? And what was your main motivation? Was it your grandfather's service, or what was it?
I suppose because I was a legacy kid, I was pretty much born into into a defence related type stuff. Mum was was a war widow. I got involved in legacy, so I was around other kids who were military families. Who'd lost their dad. In most cases, dad. It was very rarely. It was a mum. But we were all pretty like-minded. We were all pretty much the same sort of thing. And I just knew that pretty much from the time I could walk, I knew I was going to be a soldier. It just seemed the appropriate thing for me to do. So very, very early for me.
So in 1989, you joined the army, and what was basic training like for you? And then what corps did you go into?
So as you said, I joined in 89. I really wanted to be a tunnel rat. One of my friends, his dad was a tunnel rat, on the first tour in Vietnam, and I was just so I loved all the dark confined spaces, all of that sort of stuff as a kid. And so I thought, that'd be my pathway. I always had this, sort of like I wanted to go for SAS, but I was trying to fit it all in, going to engineers. That's not true. I wanted to be a tunnel rat in infantry, and I assumed that we had them in pioneers, and it was devastated to find out we didn't. And nobody told me that really early on too. So I had to live with that one saying, yes, I want to go to infantry, I want to go to pioneers, and I want to be a tunnel rat. And then when I got to Kapooka, they told me that engineers have tunnel rats, and we as the Australian Defence Force don't have them anymore. So I always knew it was an infantry flavour that I wanted. I was just really trying to do the confined spaces thing was what I thought I'd really enjoy.
So for you being at Kapooka, what was the hardest part of Kapooka for you? Because you would have been 17 when you first went to Kapooka?
Yeah, I was 17, and I was a gobby young kid who thought he knew everything sort of stuff. So I suppose the hardest thing was learning my place. Converting from being a civvy into wearing green and understanding that and all the things that came with it. I was really lucky. I had some great blokes I went through Kapooka with that I'm still friends with today. A couple of West Aussies, so guys from home. So we had plenty in common with, and a good mate of mine, a guy called Dominic Redmond that I went through with. So, it was just about learning to grow up and learning to do things properly for myself and embrace, I suppose, the changes.
So you get posted to 3RAR, and what was it like in the early stages of 3RAR when you joined?
3RR was an amazing battalion to be a part of. It was really, really strong esprit de corps. But it was, the battalion had something that it did different than the rest of the defence. So there was a real sense of ownership of being and belonging being in the unit. Most of the guys were pretty hard and you had to earn your place, especially, that's what the 80s were like. But there was a fantastic bunch of guys who would do anything for you. So it was just a place, again, you learn your place, you learn to do your job. Hopefully you do it well and you get the respect of the people around you. And I think 3RR was a unit that really, sort of fostered that, work hard, was also drink hard, but great friend.
So in the late 80s, Pete, when you joined, was there much happening around the world in deployment wise, or were we in a bit of a holding pattern of what was to come?
Yes. Did you see I just spilled my tea all over me? So that would have been pretty funny. In the 80s, nothing was happening. It was lots and lots of training. And like we went, I went to Butterworth in 1990, and there was plenty of exercises, and there were little things that were happening around the place, and you always got a sniff of if we could be involved, but nothing really raised its head. There was the Vanuatu's and Bougainvilles and all that sort of stuff happening around us. I spent the Gulf War happened in 91, but we didn't get to play. So I suppose there was always that sniff that something was going to come up. For me, I suppose I got really lucky in 1993. I got to go to Cambodia. And for 3RR guys, there was only like 7 of us who went. So it was a case of being Johnny on the spot. And, we got a gig and it was a great trip.
You mentioned Cambodia, Pete. What did you take away from that deployment?
It's still one of the best trips I've ever had. The beauty of Cambodia, man, was like, as a young infantry guy, sort of, I don't know what it was, 21 or so, and bloody to be put on a deck, with a bunch of UNMOs, so United Nations military observers. There was, I think at one place I had, a British lieutenant colonel, a Chinese lieutenant colonel, French major, there was a whole variety of Lieutenant Colonel Malay, and little Pete Rudland, the private. So, it was a case of, you had to really switch on and get a bit of professional maturity around you. But, you're still 21, so you want to party and have a lot of fun. So I think that Cambodia gave me the autonomy to have a lot of fun, but it also gave me that opportunity to mature and do things that, I'd only dreamt of doing. So it was a fantastic trip. Absolutely loved every aspect of it. And would do that one 10 times over.
So you come back from Cambodia, Pete, and then you decide to go for SASR selection in 1994. What was your main motivation to do this? You mentioned that you did want to go SASR, but what was the main motivation for you to do this?
Oh, that one went back a little bit earlier. So when I was 19, I applied for selection, and I was told, come back in a couple of years when you're a bit older. I reapplied for the 1993 selection, and I was accepted onto that course. I'd actually been physically knocked off from the unit for my next place of parade being the selection course when I got informed that I'd been picked to go to Cambodia. So I had a discussion with the RSM and said, look, I was supposed to start selection in a couple of days. And he said, well, make a choice. What's the choice? What do you want to do? So he said to ring training squadron, those days back in training squadron. And I spoke to somebody there and they said, before, mate, go to Cambodia, come back, and we'll just panel you for the next one. If you've been panelled for this, we'll just repanel you. So in country, when it looked like I was going to be home for the start of the 94 selection, I started making some noise. My SSM was John Rankin in 2 Squadron for Cambodia. And I spoke to him, and he called the unit because he was a very qualified guy himself. And he called the unit and said, look, one of the guys was already on the course. He came over here. Can we get him repanelled? And they pretty much said, do your 3.2, have your psych in country. All good with that. You can turn up. So I did those. Funny enough, I got hit by a car doing my 3.2, running through the main street of Phnom Penh with webbing and rifle. It scared the hell out of everybody because they don't see that too often. And my psych, I was really, really drunk, and they did a group psych, or hungover is probably the correct word. And then I had way too much to say because I was a bit grumpy, and I told someone to shut up. So it wasn't really looking good for my psych on my 3.2, but I got through them both. And then on return to Australia, I got to attend the course. So I was sort of just Johnny on the spot.
So for you, Pete, what was the hardest part of selection? Like it has a high attrition rate of selection. So for you, what was the hardest part of selection?
That's a hard question, to be honest, mate. Bloody, I always thought I was, fit enough. I certainly, pack fit. I'd done the work and all that sort of stuff. I was never the fastest runner. So, on those ones, I had to really work my ass off. But the beauty of it, there's 160 odd guys on my course, so, out of that, as long as you're in that top, percentage of guys, you are going to be okay. You just didn't want to ever be down the back. I suppose the other thing is, like, I would never say that I'm not a naturally bright guy. I'm that guy who needs to study everything, and I need to learn it, and I need to find ways to, to commit that to memory. And I think, in the early days, definitely in the regiment, I had to really, really struggle, with the reinforcement cycle to remember everything and get it through. So, as part as the hardest thing for me was, trying to keep up in that sense. The academic side, I wasn't overly good at school when I was there. So it was really trying to, keep the brain in the right area and learn things at the right pace that they wanted you to learn.
So most people are aware that, or probably aren't aware that Australia deployed to the Middle East prior to 9/11 and when we went to Afghanistan, but you were involved in Iraq in 1997. What was this deployment and what was your role over there?
So prior to us going over there, one of the squadrons had gone, and they went in the capacity of recovery of downed pilots. So the squadron had gone in, they'd done a rotation. We were staying on. So we had a composite troop. So one water, one land, and one air, and one Kiwi. So we had the 4 patrols of us grouped up, and we had a, obviously command element, and we went there, and that was mainly, looking at how we would conduct those type of operations in a coalition force environment. So, US pilot goes down or a British pilot down, what are those assets that we need to put together? How are we going to do it? And establishing those SOPs. So it was a pretty amazing little trip, actually.
So you then... And it's just like I'm looking at my notes here, Pete, and you've went Cambodia, then you went Iraq, and then you deployed to East Timor, and you then left the SASR. And what made you leave the SASR and then go to For Commando?
Well, to be honest, mate, I wasn't overly enjoying life at the time. But I sort of, I was coming up on the end of my second rotation. I suppose I didn't give a great account of myself as a young fella, remembering I was 22 when I did my selection course. Most of the other guys were older, married, kids. I was still young and dumb. But
as we've all been, Pete.
Yeah. So, made a few mistakes, stood on my dick a few times. I had a few personality clashes and at the time, you probably blamed the whole world for them, but, thinking back, it was probably my own doing. So it just, life wasn't going overly well, and I was contemplating a discharge. My then partner, my oldest daughter's mum, we were looking pretty shaky as well at the time. So I tried to do something that would save my home life and also keep my interest in defence. And my SSM at the time had a chat and said, well, have you thought of going over to then 4 RAR? And I said, mate, no, I didn't really have an interest. And so we got talking a little bit about it. And a few of the other guys who were going, good guys, I liked them. And it sort of just unfolded. It seemed to be a good thing. I never really wanted to leave Army. I never really knew what I was going to do after it. So it was, change is a good holiday, and embrace the change and see what happens. And I was willing to stick my hand up and do it. And I'm really glad that I did, actually. It was a good path for me.
Because for the people who aren't aware, Pete, so For Commando was stepped up. So correct me if I'm wrong, Pete. For Commando was stepped up in 1997, rolled into Special Forces, and then 98 it was open to wider Army, and then so they were setting up their new Special Forces capabilities, weren't they, when you went to the regiment?
Yeah, so I suppose they ran a selection course, and I can't remember what year that was. It was a bit of a joint course, and the scuttlebutt around back in Perth wasn't really much. Nobody really cared too much about what was happening on the East Coast, and so we didn't really follow it. Perth is quite isolated at times and that. And then so around the time I went to them, though, there was a B company with a qualified company. And they were so it was a small bunch of guys who had done their selection course that had been predominantly run by of guys from the regiment and other guys across one commando regiment. And they were, sort of developing their pathway forward, as in, OPA serials and how the ORBAT would look. So then Timor come up in 2001 for the unit. And they had to re-roll and go back into being a conventional infantry battalion. So it was For RSL Commando. They did that trip, and during that time, 9/11 happened. So that changed the whole rolling again. With TAG East then being raised out of that, more guys from Perth coming across to facilitate the TAG East. Training being conducted in WA to facilitate the manning of that. So the rolling and the complexity of the unit stepped up quite quickly. It was a really amazing thing to see. The selection courses getting more guys through while still maintaining that standard of guys, who are appropriate for the unit. So, man, it was a pretty awesome time. A lot happening in a short period of time, and a really good thing to be a part of.
So for you, Pete, just for the listener who isn't aware, you transferred from SAS to Commando. So did you still have to go through the selection process again of you were beret qualified for SASR, and then did you have to go through the process of obtaining selection going to get your green beret?
No, Jesus, no, not back. Certainly not back in those days. I had the 353 ECN and Commandos was a 079, and they were still establishing those boundaries, and all of the course criteria that I had as part of 353 certainly enabled me for the 079. There was a couple of things like, the amphibious course that, I jumped on the next one and did. And, but as a whole, I had those skill sets, and I'd already been assessed for my suitabilities within, employment within special operations. So, it was fine, and myself and others were all in that same boat,
So in 2003, Pete, you were on exchange to the British Army. Can you share with the listeners how the exchange process worked, and what were you doing with the British Army?
So the way that sort of went down, I was sorting out all the legal matters with custody of my children when the boys were gearing up to deploy for the war. Man, I sort of had to put my hand on my heart and say to the RSM, I'm still dealing with custody arrangements and all that sort of stuff. And, I had to sort of withdraw from deploying with the guys. So they all took off and went away and did their thing. And my court stuff wrapped up. And I went and seen the RSM and said, look, I'm done now. Whatever you need me to do, man, I'm your man. Thinking there was stuff around the unit, whatever. But he said, would you like to go on long look? And I was like, yeah, whatever, dude. So he flipped me this long look trip. And then I got in country on the long look, which was only a few weeks later. But I got on, as soon as I landed in England, I was met by a sergeant from the unit. And he started briefing me up and said, what unit I was going to. And then I got there and I was briefed by a WO1, so an ex-SAS guy. And he said, look, we're deploying to Iraq in a couple of days. Do you want to come? I was like, yeah, Jesus, yeah. So we did a couple of days worth of quick training. I got my British kit. We jumped on a plane. We got into Q8. We got into, so they called them Eagle camps. There's a whole series of camps in the desert, and then we went in. So it was a very quick transition from finishing up, thinking I was like going nowhere, missed out on the trip and all that sort of stuff, to being on a plane, being in England. The long look element of it sort of disappeared for a while. I had a few skill sets that the POMs wanted, and they applied for me to stay on, so I got to stay on in country. So I did, sort of most of Telic 1, Telic 2, Telic 3. So I did a fair bit of time in country with them. It was really, really good.
So for most people, Pete, who aren't aware, is the British Army, is it different to the way we work as the Australian Army? And what did you take away from that deployment?
So it's always a good one. You always have to be very careful when you're talking about other armies and that. But I honestly found a lot of things they were doing, we had stopped doing. I found that POMs weren't overly keen for change. But like their soldiers were fantastic. They reminded of us, very, guys who just wanted to get in and get the job done and were very industrious. They would steal anything, which was amazing. I've never seen people steal it. Like they call us the Crims and send us to this country. My God, if you had put down, I don't know, this pen, it was stolen in a second. They were out of control. I'd never seen quite like them. But I really enjoyed working with them. I found it definitely different. I suppose, we have our SOPs and we spend so much time learning how to do those. And then to go over to another army and do, in many cases, very, very different SOPs. I thought that we would be closer to what we were doing. But that was cool. But I certainly had to, I suppose, prove myself to them as well. To me, I was the sort of, Aussie guy. They were doing their thing and I was there to see it. But it was great working with them. I really enjoyed it. It was quite isolating, I suppose, as well, being one Australian with, another culture. Off-offs were really weird. So orders for opening fire. So you got the legality from Australia and the legality from England. They fire warning shots, for example, or shots, and we don't. So knowing who's off-offs that I would come under on a deployment like that, but I have to come under Australian because I'm Australian, but you also need to sort of still mix within that the operational tempo with stuff. So it was pretty funky. The really cool thing was money. When you look at what we get for a deployment and then you look at what POMs get, no Aussie should ever whinge ever again. Because those poor bastards, they do it hard and we get very looked after.
I've said it on other podcasts that here in this country, mate, we've got nothing to whinge about. We are so lucky and you've seen firsthand, you've been to other countries that have been through wars and we've got nothing to whinge about in this country.
No, we live the good life. We certainly live. Well, we do have one thing to whinge about though. Queensland beat New South Wales in state of origin. So Sunday is going to be very taxing to see what happens.
That's true. That is very true, Pete. Very, very true. And yeah, go New South Wales. So I'm with you, Pete. Go New South Wales. So you come back from your Iraq trip in 2003 and your exchange, and then you deploy. So you come back, you're in the unit, and then you deploy in 2006 to East Timor again. What was this deployment, and what was the role of the commandos over there on that deployment?
So that was a really good deployment, actually. I really enjoyed that one. So the initial guys on the ground were a mixture of, SASR and Commandos. Initially it was supposed to be the aircraft, the Black Hawks would go in first and secure the airfield, and then we would follow in and C-130s. But the Black Hawks, I think, ran out of fuel. They engaged strong winds for the flights over, so their fuel limited how far they could get across. So they just didn't make it to the airfield. So we pretty much, rolled off the aircrafts, walked off. There was very little threat, very, very little threat. So we rolled out. in town was a little bit of chaos, I suppose, for the locals, and our guys, we sort of secured it. The battalions then came in behind us, and then between the two FEs, then set about securing the major places, so the shipping and things like that. So anything strategic, we went out, grabbed those, made sure they were secure, and then we pushed out. And we spent a lot of time. So both FEs really spent a lot of time with the key leadership engagement, and securing that and creating some stability across the political parties and things like that. So it was a really good trip, something a bit different.
It's sort of in a sense, Pete, was it like a peacekeeping dash, or not a peacekeeping operation?
Mate, as peacekeeping, there was no peacemaking in it. I mean, we're, just the presence of Australian troops with assets, is enough to pretty much quash most things. I mean, at the end of the day, it wasn't a huge scale thing, but it was very smart of Australia. There was the political unrest. There was, just unrest that starting to creep in across the countries, plus the country making decisions probably that were maybe premature. So by sending troops in, giving them that stability again, letting them know that, we're there to help, I think just steadied the ship again. So, and that's really what it was, just the Australian government saying, we're here, we're always watching, we're always going to help you if something goes wrong. And that's exactly what we did.
And then, so you come back from East Timor, and then you go to the parachute training school. And what was the reason that you went to the parachute training school, and how long did you spend in the school?
So I suppose, going back to my 3 RAR days, I used to love around parachuting. And then so I did a bit of that. And then, when I went to the regiment, I was in air ops. And then I was just starting to learn the craft properly. Going across to then 4 RAR, again, capability growing, a lot of water, base jumping. I was always pretty keen about sticking my hand up to be an instructor across the board sort of thing. So, and also, you've got to have a look at your career and say, well, I can't stay here forever. I've got to do an away posting, and, that's part of your promotion progress. So you might as well go somewhere you wanted. So, I picked the school, and yeah, bloody did my PJI course, which when you do your PJI course, you're down there for 2 rotations anyway, so 2 courses. So you're the best part of 6 months, you're out of the unit and down to PDS. And then my posting came shortly after that. So it was a 2-year posting. And yeah, so went down there for the 2 years, tried to get as many jumps as I could, enjoyed, instructing. Met my wife down there. She was one of the students. So yeah, it was a good little spot.
And then you transferred back to, so you finished that posting, then you transferred back to Commando, and then in 2010, and then you were soon deployed to Afghanistan. And what, for you in the lead up with everything that had happened with the boys going on rotations from 2005 onwards, what was your thoughts of finally getting into Afghanistan and doing your bit to get in Afghanistan?
I was pretty keen, and I was also very lucky. I'd done a fair bit of time with Alpha Company whilst in the unit, and I enjoyed working with Alpha. And when I was told that I was going back to the regiment and that I would be going into Alpha on the next rotation, I was pretty happy. So I was fully qualified for warrant. I did my subject courses while I was down at the parachute school. And there was some discussion about me being promoted and various locations. And I really didn't want the promotion. I wanted to go to Afghanistan as a Bravo, and especially with Tudo. So the opportunity was there. And luckily that was afforded to me. I got to go back back to the unit as a Bravo again, and then get a trip as a Bravo. So I was really excited about that. Plus the guys I was going with, I knew most of the guys pretty well, and they're a good bunch of guys. So it was looking good. And especially the OC on that trip was a fantastic bloke that I liked a lot. And he had some really good ideas of what was going to happen on that trip. So I was sort of looking forward to see them unfold.
So what were your first thoughts when you got into country, and did you have much interaction with the locals, Pete, or was it strictly you were mainly there for your missions, and what was your thoughts of the country when you got in and boots on the ground?
Initially, I went in on the advance party. So the officers and bravos went in on the advance party. And then the guys all came in later. So it gave us a bit of time to get on the ground, have a look around, get a bit of a feel, read through a few of the patrol reports for different areas that we were looking at, wanting to go to, get a feel for. So we got there in February. We got there, from memory, I think we got there on Valentine's Day. So it's the 14th of February. But so it's, coming out of the winter time. So the snow, there's still a lot of snow on the peaks. There's a fair bit of rain around. The runway wasn't sealed back in those days. So they couldn't land heavy aircrafts on it. So it gave us a few more days without the digs, which was great. We got to, just make sure that we'd done everything. So when they arrived, it was a nice, smooth sort of handover. And they liked that too, because they then were in the UAE partying, so they had a good time. But it was just good to do the wander. But there was really, in those early ones, so there was no contact with locals. That was, on base, doing what we needed to do for preparation for the guys. But on, subsequent operations, some of them are very, focused around getting out there, meeting the locals, talking to the locals, establishing, good boundaries with the locals.
So when you were over there, Pete, and what was Two Commandos' role at that time of the war on your deployment, and were, in your opinion, do you feel that you achieved those objectives?
The roles, so there's a funky thing, I suppose, because at the end of the day, FE Alpha, FE Bravo, so SAS and Two Commando, the roles, there was a bit of overlap, with the DAs, the direct action stuff, being part of the roles for both. Commandos were doing, a lot of DA type of stuff. So, you're sort of fighting for jobs. But I think definitely, with, at that strategic level for Australian forces, for engagement, on key personnel, also key leadership engagement, we certainly got the job. We got the job done. And I think both FEs, really got the job done really, really well.
So, Pete, if it's all right with you, so you're in country now, and we'll go forward to, as I mentioned, the events of June 2010. So on 21st of June 2010, you were among 10 Australians from the Special Operations Group, along with 5 Americans on a coalition force helicopter when it went down in rugged terrain in North Kandahar. Perhaps you could share with us the lead up to and what you can remember of that day where your 3 fellow Australian Commandos were killed and also the US soldier was killed. So if you could, Pete, just give us a lead up to what was happening on that day and what you remember.
Okay, mate. I suppose to tell this one, you've got to sort of tell it in 2 stories, because there's the way the memory comeback's a little weird on that one. So in the day before we went in, so in the lead up, I suppose, and the planning. So after the Battle of Shawalikot, so Shinadu and Jakak, but I can't even say the name right now. Kajaki, thank you. So they make up the Shawalikot offensive. So that's the battle, yeah. So FE Alpha, FE Bravo's combination in on that target. So the effect that had was a lot of the fighting age males to move towards Kandahar. So tracking those fighting age males down towards Kandahar, we set up a series of targeting operations where, half the element would then, go into a village, pretty much sit around to piss them off as much as required, encourage the fight, and get involved in the fight, treat them a bit more. And then the rest of the element would stay behind, watch that, and then would be prepared, ready to go and support that operation. So we were continuing to do those targeting operations. And on the last day of those targeting operations, my aircraft my aircraft crashed at about 3:51 in the morning. So my part of that, in delivering orders the day prior to the crash, I was going in with the sniper team, and we'd be in an overwatch over the town with myself and the bear. And I'd gone in and I'd discussed, the seating arrangements with the patrol commander, which was Gary Robinson. We, looked at how many guys we could take as part of that because of the lift capability with Black Hawks and the altitudes. So we'd just finished that, and then I'd gone back to my room. I was going to try to knock off a movie before orders came up. And I was watching Zombieland. So I was watching that, got a knock at the door. One of the guys, Dimmy, came in. And so Dimmy had come in, looked around my room. We had the quick conversation about, what we were going to do. And then I was trying to boot him out. And, Dimmy's going, oh, your sergeants have the good life. You've got your own rooms. They were all sharing. And I'm like, get out, Dimmy. And as he closed the door, I then woke up in Germany. So in my head, it was instantaneous. I was missing, days worth of stuff there. And it was really quite weird. When I woke up in Germany, it was just like, what the hell? My leg was elevated in front of me, big hole in my leg, or limbs weren't working properly. And there was a lot of confusion and it was just really weird. But, the reality of it was, I now, I have no recollection of orders. I have no recollection of, dinner, getting on the aircraft or anything like that. I can remember just prior to us crashing, flicking my night vision goggles down on the 3-minute mark, and I remember seeing the ground. I said something, said a word starting with F and ending in K, very, very briefly, and hit the ground. I don't remember the crash. I remember sitting up in like a puff of smoke with the other choppers landing off behind me. I can remember calling to them, yelling out to the guys. I remember them running over, brief conversation with the medic. And then I can remember one of the guys trying to pick me up, and I remember screaming my ass off and then getting on the chopper. And then after that, I don't really remember much. So it's different weird sort of memories of the crash site. It's funny, they always say rugged terrain. I've seen photos of the crash site. It's as flat as a tack. Absolutely flat as a tack. It's that typical Afghani desert, just flat. And there was a little lip of a wadi. So as the aircraft was coming down, but he's actually descended enough to hit the top lip of the wadi and flip it over. So I definitely wouldn't say rugged terrain.
So, Pete, obviously years late, so we'll get to you wake up in Germany and then your long process starts of your recovery. But what findings came out of that what actually caused the chopper to crash?
Well, pilot error is the takeaway for that one. So the black box doesn't really show too much. It's, the pilots are sort of, trying to ascertain where the horizon is. It was pitch black. Like you couldn't even see your hand in front of your face. So there's a small conversation between the two pilots on the horizon. One of the loadmasters, the loadmaster left side. So that's Brandon Silk. He died in the crash. Brandon asks the pilot, how low are you going to go? And then we strike the ground straight after. So, if the pilots were flying on instruments, they wouldn't need to be looking for the horizon. It pretty much just comes down to pilot error, and that's no disrespect against the pilots. There's a lot going on in the aircraft. We're 3 minutes out from a target. It's everything's happening fast, and errors can be made, and unfortunately they were on that day.
Pete, it was the other day was the anniversary, and we lost, as you said, 3 commandos: Ben Chuck, Timmy Applin, and Scotty Palmer. Mate, what are your memories of the boys when you served with them?
Well, if we're going to talk about individual memories, buddy, so we'll start with Scotty. Scotty was a bloody good soldier, come across from B Company. I was very, very happy to have him within the platoon. Good, helpful guy, intelligent guy, good leadership skills. A bloke who was going to stick around in the military for a long time. Lovely bloke. I liked being around him. So Tim Applin, only a couple of years younger than myself, had been an ex-sergeant, mature, funny bastard. Don't ever let that man drink, sort of thing. My God, only a couple of days before him, he was so drunk. Beforehand, he was so drunk that he was screaming out. He was cracking me up. He's a funny guy. Anybody who knows Tim Applin knows how funny he is. He is just, just a first-rate guy. Bloody lovely bloke. And Benny Chuck. Benny Chuck is the best-looking man I think I've ever known. Bloody, the things that stick out in your mind. We were up in Brisbane. We were drinking one time. We went into a nightclub, and I tell you what, he stopped every chick in the place. As he walked through, you could see him drill and go, oh. I'm like, Jesus, Ben, like, leave some for the rest of us. Like, what the hell? Because he was just such a charismatic guy and a good-looking guy. Chicks just dug him in a big way. But he was the most loyal guy in the world to his fiancée. He loved her immensely and was extremely loyal to her. And you just sit there and you go, my God, dude, could you be uglier? So he was a fantastic guy. There was three great guys, and I really enjoyed working with all three of them in different capacities.
And then, Pete, we go forward. You're in Germany. You wake up and so what injuries did you have? You mentioned that you had a hole in your leg, but you had a brain injury. And what was it like for you when you'd woken up and going, what the hell? Like, what happened?
It was painful and more bloody painful. I've never known pain like that, and I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Like most of, lower leg was broken, the hole in my leg, my pelvis, my ribs, my spine, most of the transverse process were either broken, 2 or 3 on each one, lower and thoracic. My liver, my kidney, this arm was damaged and broken. The function in my hands weren't overly good as well, and especially thumb function. The side of my face had been damaged. So I couldn't see properly because of the fracture to my eye socket. My cheek hurt all the time with the fracture there, and my nose was crap, so I couldn't breathe properly. And the doctor simulated my nose as being effectively 30 broken noses when they rebuilt it. So they actually took strips off the back of my ear and cut my nose out, and then rebuilt the inside of the nose with the ear. So it was a really interesting time. Everything was just painful, and everything I did was painful. And lucky enough, my brother was in Germany, and so John Boy would run around and get me ice, because I wasn't allowed to eat and any of that sort of stuff and that. So he would run around and get me water and put it on my lips, and a little bit of yogurt at time, and put that in for a bit of taste. And it was just weird, mate. It was so bloody painful, and I was very appreciative for the amount of drugs I was getting. But it was a time where I had to really sit down and reflect about the changes. With the brain injury, I didn't overly understand, because it was so early, and I was still trying to understand what was going on. But what I certainly did, to be honest, I thought it was dead. And so I thought there was no consequence for anything that I said or did. And so I was quite violent towards everybody and just pretty crazy as a whole. So it took a while, I suppose, to get some sort of clarity back. And it wasn't until I was in Australia that I sort of started to get clarity, and that came after, a long period of time. It was confusing is probably the best way to say.
So, and I'm just trying to imagine, Pete. So was that a time, like, with the injuries, like you being so fit and so healthy before, and being in, being a second commando, in the regiment, for you, was that a really dark time as well as the recovery started? Like, were you ever feeling like, why me? Why did this happen to me?
Oh, mate, anybody who has a serious injury, you have to go through that, that roller coaster. Nobody wakes up and goes, oh, it's a great day. You're going to you're going to have a low time and you're going to have high time, and then you're going to have a low time 1,000 times more, and you're going to 1,000 more high times. Initially it was the obvious one was that I'd lost 3 of my men that I took very seriously, as a Bravo, that I wanted to bring my guys home. And I felt horribly that I felt like I'd let them down and their families down. Even though, there was no way that I had control over it. It's still, that very real sensation of that I'd lost guys. And I felt really, really bad for that. And it took a long time for that one to understand it and to process that one properly. I think the fact that I didn't get to go to their funerals again because I was in a hospital bed was a really big one. I just felt like I hadn't done my job. So there was a lot of strangeness around that and complexity that goes with that.
So how long were you in Germany before you were transported back to Australia, and how long were you in Australia recovering before you actually could get back to the unit eventually?
Oh Jesus! Germany, I suppose I think we're there for about a week. Most of that I really don't know. I have very limited memories, and you'd think that I'd know more about the trip to Germany, but I don't. We come back to Australia. We went into Westmead. I stayed there for a while, and then from Westmead I went to the military hospital, so Holsworthy, and then from then I was in hospital. So when they let me out, my then partner was an OT, and she worked at a hospital, and she had worked at Westmead. I pretty much bullshitted to the hospital that she was really happy to take care of me and all that sort of stuff, and I was better than what I was. So they let me go home, and I was a horrible burden to her, I can tell you, because I couldn't even, wash myself or bloody do anything. And then, so what they did was they had a hospital bed for me at Holsworthy. And then every day I would then get in a taxi or an ambo, and they would take me to Holsworthy, and I'd spend the whole day at the hospital. And then at night when she was on her way home, then they would put me in a taxi or an ambo and take me home again. So I should have been in hospital a lot longer, but that process got me out of it. And then from there, I just was basically on like a home thing for a long time. And then from there, I split up with my girlfriend, and then I had nobody to look after me. So I went to Western Australia, where I had family. And then, so I posted back into SASR there, and then was doing all my treatment through there. And I started doing some, a couple of days of work here and there. But because of the fatigue back with all of it, like to be able to, go to work, drive to work, and then, do some rehab, and then, go up to the office, I really wasn't achieving anything. And it was a mixture of being ashamed of myself, that, I was in the workplace and I wasn't doing anything. And if I was given a task, the chances are I wasn't going to be able to complete the task anyway. So, it started to wear me down a little bit, actually going in. And then, so I started to do more physio on a civilian type of physio and more of my own rehab type stuff. And then I realised that, that I wasn't going to be staying in defence, if I couldn't do the job properly and commit to it. And like defence were amazing, man. They offered me the world. They really did. I got offered some great positions, and they were fully understanding of it, and they were fully willing to let me slowly ease back in. But I had sort of decided that I didn't want to be that dude who was just hanging around because he was the tard who had the accident, and they wanted to be sympathetic. I realised that I needed to make some changes in myself, and just not be that dude. So yeah.
So for you, Pete, did you, with the injuries you sustained, did you have to learn to walk again and all that sort of stuff? How was that process for you? So
it was a weird one because initially, so I had like a limited leg function, but the legs didn't work. I had a nerve conduction study, and it came back on a 0 on L2, 3, and 4. So I only had leg function on 1 and 5. So they said, based on those results, that I would be a non-walker. I had no bowel function and no urine function as well. So it wasn't looking overly good in the early days. And then a surgeon, he did the operation again. So he basically took out all the hardware and then put it back in on the other side. And I started to get small function, and it's just bit by bit it came, bowel come back and all that sort of stuff. But they were even still saying, because I still wasn't getting good results for the nerve conduction studies. So, there was still that like, to what function would my legs actually have? What were they going to be? But I was really, really lucky. So I went through the whole learning to walk again, and I went through the various phases, from wheelchair up onto the brace and then crutches and all that sort of stuff. So just slowly plodding along, trying to do more and more each time that I got the opportunity to do it.
So you then, as you said, you discharge from the army. So obviously the recovery keeps happening. You go into SASR and do, the jobs that you could do whilst you're recovering. And then you discharged from the army in 2017. And how hard of a decision was this for you? Because this is all you've known from when you were 17 years of age. It was a really mixed emotion, I suppose, because I was comfortable that, that my time had come, petrified because I didn't want to be a civilian and didn't know what was out there, petrified that I didn't know, like how to look after myself in a big world, like what's Medicare and all that sort of shit. So all of that sort of stuff, I suppose, was really weird. But I was really well and truly scared of the situation. I had really good people through the unit welfare boards represent me. So I think that, most things had sort of gone pretty well. My wife was a police officer, so, we were posted in the town that she was working in and that. So we had, we had good friends and people around us, with the other police officers in that, which are, that community is very much like the defence community, You get good and bad guys in there, but the good guys are great. You want to spend as much time with them as you can. So I was really lucky, I suppose, with all the things that we had around. Plus, we'd bought a farm, and I was really keeping myself busy, doing those little jobs. And it sort of was the right pathway and the right time, but I was still petrified. So how are the boys from the unit toward, like, how was their support in your recovery? Were they very supportive in always checking in on you? And because I know some of the veterans I've spoken to that they feel a loss of purpose, and they feel once they're discharged from the army that there's a sense of loss of purpose. How was that for you? I was pretty lucky, both for Sydney and Perth. Going into work, I was always treated really well by all the guys and all that sort of stuff. People come to see me. I caught up with lots of people, so I still got to have the conversation and find out what was happening in the workplace, because, it's always cool to know what everybody else is doing, it keeps you in the loop. So that was really good. But I made the point of, so one of the guys that I came across in the early days, sort of, and I'll throw the example, sort of, sat in the corner of the room, and every time that you're seeing him, how are you? Oh, my leg. Oh, this, oh, that, and it was always negative. And, if you were talking to anybody, they'd say, oh, don't go and talk to him. It'll be the most painful hour of your life. And so I thought to myself, I don't want to be that dude. I don't want to be, when someone sees me in the mess, go, oh, shit, don't talk to Pete. Don't go and talk to Pete. Otherwise, all you're going to do is, hear all about how his foot hurts or his arm hurts or this hurts. And I was really trying to be really cognizant of that. So, yeah, I'm good. How good are you? Real good, mate. How are you? So I tried to get away from having that narrative. And I think, if you have the narrative that you're good, what I used to say, and I still say it today, I'm good. I'm always good, mate. But so, it sort of, it works a lot better. If you come in with, like, oh,
so sore, my arm, my back. Nobody wants to talk to you. Nobody wants to hear that. I mean, do you want to hear it? So, it was about, setting a certain scene and, conversations flow from that. Oh, what are you doing, man? Where are you working now? Oh, I'm working in this cell. Doing much, yeah. So it keeps it going.
I know, Pete, from what you're saying, because, I've gone through my own mental health struggles, and when I was 22, I did attempt suicide, and I said to my best friend, she's still my best friend today, I said, why did you hang around me? Like, I was so negative on the world, and I know exactly what you're saying, because I had such a negative outlook on life that I looked back now and I go, why would anyone want to hang out with me and speak to me? Because all I had was negativity. That was all I was pushing out to people. But now it's the total opposite. I'm a person that puts positivity out. I'm like, why did you hang around me? And she said, because I loved you. I loved the person behind you. I always knew that there was that person that was there. The positive person was there. And, as I said to you, losing 60 kilos, that's where it all changed. It was my weight that was the issue that was causing me my most depression, and also being bullied. But that's it. I know exactly what you're saying, and it's like we've got to be the ones that change and go, no, I'm not going to be like that. I'm not going to be negative. I'm only going to look. And for you, Pete, I can see there would be chances there to go, well, yeah, I could be negative on life, look at what's happened, but you're not. You're so positive on your outlook on life, and it's credit to you.
Thanks, Roy. I was going to say that there's a really big one back in those days. I had my two daughters then, my two oldest daughter, Keita and Cyan, and they were with their mum. And when I first got hurt, I managed to get hold of a phone with a brain injury, and I rang my daughter, and I was really confused. I didn't know where I was or anything like that. And she fully wigged out. Her mother rang me and abused me, which was really great, brain injury, because that's what you need. But after that, they did the best to keep the phone away from me, because, again, I got a brain injury. I'm confused. I don't know what I'm saying. So they kept that away from me. But as I started to think about, I had impacted on my daughter and totally wigged her out, and to the point that they were frightened to come and see me. I never really, I had plenty of hours sitting there looking at the roof of a hotel room. Oh, not a hotel room, a hospital room. To think about, how to overcome things, so the brain injury stuff I was so scared of, and I was trying to get control of it, and I was always really fighting for that, because I needed to have an end state. I needed to, have those goals, long-term, short-term, about being in a position for my kids to see me. And I was so scared of being, like mental case in a hospital in Perth, completely by myself, and nobody coming to see me, being that dude, throwing shit at visitors as they come past, that type of stuff, So I was really trying to make sure I got across it, and I wanted to be able to, to be a good father again, and and all the other things. And like same, when I met Tam, or started dating Tam, Tam was 13 years younger than me. And she wanted a family. She was saying, if we're going to stay together, I'm going to want kids and that sort of stuff. And that was understandable. So, if I'm going to take on this life, I've got to sort of step up to it, and I was really, really solid in making sure that, I was going to be the man that I wanted to be, not the man that was being forced upon me.
So Pete, for you and it's what you've just mentioned. So do we not, or do we look enough into the toll that service has on families, and especially like you were injured, and the effects that it had on your family? Have we done enough?
Mate, I think we are. And I mean, we're certainly looking at that in the Royal Commission. I've been present for, all 3 or 4 or 5 sittings of the Royal Commission so far for the first 3 days of each one of them, and have been looking in on a lot. I think Defence do a hell of a lot for the families. There's certainly a lot more than, when I first joined. Families weren't invited to anything, but, they're invited to everything. They're kept well informed. I think, the liaisons do a great job. I think the welfare officers do a great job. I think they do a lot. We also need to remember, and this is, again, what I attribute to a lot of my own stuff, is I stopped expecting everybody else to do shit for my family, and I did it myself, or my family did it. You know, we've raised our hand and we've done it. We can't keep, as defence members and that, we can't keep expecting everybody to do things for us. And the example I'll give you, you know, so Tam's a police officer, or was a police officer. She works for police now, still, but not as a sworn officer. You know, I mean, they don't get everything handed to them. You know, there's not anybody running around wiping their ass every time something goes wrong, or, you know, paying them money and all this sort of stuff. They got to get on with the job. And if they're not fit to get on with the job, they leave, you know, and they find something else. Now, they go through, you know, unbelievable hardships. You know, some of the jobs that, you know, that my wife went to was out of control. You know, she's seeing fatalities all the time, you know, beatings, domestic violence, the whole works. And, you know, and they get on with the job because, you know, that's the way it is. And then on defence, so many times we're so quick to stick a hand up when something doesn't go our way. You know, I think it's sort of an unrealistic expectation. You know, yes, our employer must look after us, and we do a job that is very different that nobody else will ever do. But that also doesn't mean we have our hand out for the rest of our lives. You know, we have our hand up, you know, and we should be looking to assist each other, not be a drain on each other. That's the way I feel.
I think it's a really good point, mate, that, you know, it's true. And I think, as you say, you know, sometimes take ownership yourself. Like, take ownership of it yourself, and try and fix to the best of you that you can. Try and fix the problem, and if you do need that help, then ask for it, you know, and try first. Don't just go, no, where, you know, it's too hard. Try first.
Yeah, bloody oath.
So, Pete, you've discharged, and then you then go into doing some counselling, and what made you do this to start working with post-traumatic stress and people, so fireys, police? What made you go down this path?
So there was a number of things in that. So the first one was, so my CO at the time when I got hurt, so he said to me, you know, have you ever thought of being a counsellor? I was like, no. I was laughing my ass off, actually. And he goes, you know, every bastard always asks you, you know, for help anyway. You know, asks your opinion on stuff. Yeah, and you do provide, you know, sound advice sort of thing. And so I had a bit of a think about it. And so under J43, for transitioning out of defence, I was granted J43, and I thought I'd stick my hand up as a counsellor. So I started doing that while we were out on the farm at York. And so Tam was a, you know, police officer, so I was looking at that, and I was seeing the things that the guys at the station were going through, you know, with, you know, finding dudes that had been dead in their car for 12 months, you know, and another dude found dead in their car in a tent for 12 months. You know, has a huge impact on some of these guys. And, you know, they were going through a lot, and they were working long hours, you know, and trying to really support the community. Then when you look at, I used to do fire and rescue as well. You know, I mean, some of the guys in my station went to jobs where their loved ones were fatalities in. You know, so again, who helps these people? Nobody. You know, there was nobody for the fire and rescue. There was no one for them to reach out to. So, you know, part of the counselling stuff, I made that available, and I said, guys, if you need somebody to talk to, you know, I'm here. And it was really good to talk to the guys and girls, you know, over the period of time, and learn how they were dealing with it, learning how they were shaping it, and to provide that support. And I suppose the post-traumatic stress portion of it, it just seemed to be the right space, you know, like as far as, you know, marriage counselling, you know, let's face it, most marriages struggle because the two people don't listen to each other. You know, stop talking and listen to each other and you're all right. I don't want to sit there and hear about people, you know, he doesn't pick up his shit. I don't care. You know, like I really don't. But as far as, you know, post-traumatic stress, these are real things that guys really struggle with. And when you think about it, what I really like, I suppose, is people used to say post-traumatic stress disorder, and I used to really get annoyed with the disorder element of it. It was almost like labeling, you know. So when I got into the counselling space and I was learning, my craft and where I fitted into it, if I'm counselling somebody and say I'm counselling you and, you were saying that you've had some hardships or there was a car accident or something like that, and then, you're still, you're functioning, but you're having maybe a few flashbacks or struggling to get over it. And then we look at, say, you've got post-traumatic stress. Now, it could be, it could be mild, it could be a lot and so on. So, I sit there and if I say to you, you've got post-traumatic stress disorder, you're going to go, oh my God, but if I say, I think you've got a bit of post-traumatic stress and there's ways that we can look into helping you with that. We can give strategies and, it's not, something that needs to be debilitating in your life. It's something that you can learn to live with the right, strategies in place. And you go, oh, that's so easy. So I really went down that road on the terminology on it. And then I started to see, once I learned to change the terminology of it, I learned how to talk to people and how to engage with them properly. And you could really see the benefit in the people I was talking to, the people who were really struggling, would leave after a session and you could see them, I feel good about what the rest of the day brings, and do that realistic expectations, tomorrow might be another shit day, but I've given you the strategy on what to do, and it's a continual process. I like that. I like that it was something that people who are in that dark place that you could just reach in and just help a little bit, and set them with their path, as opposed to, my wife doesn't like what I do. It seemed to be a bit.
I think, Pete, also too, and for me, what I've known, especially with me having ADHD with learning difficulties and being classed, as a disability, it's that growing up, mate, that's what it was. And I wouldn't say I'd be laughed at. Like, I'd be like, oh, he's got a disability. Oh, he's got, and I'm only writing about it in my book at the moment, Pete. And it brings a lot of pain back. Like, it brings a lot of pain back to me because I go back to that time of where I was, where I was laughed at and now, if people like ADD and ADHD is accepted now with learning difficulties, it's like, oh, okay, well, let's mentor them and let's help them. As when I was going through it, mate, I was laughed at and I was made fun of for having something that's that's pretty normal in, like, it's, if you look around the world, mate, there's a lot of people that have ADHD and and there's a lot of successful people that have gone on and had grateful, successful careers. We should, like you say, the disorder, you take that off. Yeah, I can see PTS sounds very different to having PTSD, like the D, and I know exactly what you're saying because I had it too, and I know what it's, having that disability is it sucks, like it really did, and it's a lot of pain brought to me that, like I've learned to be resilient from it. Like I've grown into the person I am today, but it was tough as a kid. It was tough, and that led to a build up of all the things that had happened to me and why I attempted my suicide when I did. So yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. So, Pete, for you, how important has through your recovery, you get involved with Invictus Games, and how important has sport been in your recovery and the process of you recovering?
Oh, sport for me was a really, really big one, man. But because I'd always been sort of active and that, and then all of that was taken away from me. I started to chub up. So I looked like a really chubby guy, and I wasn't liking that. So, when you look at yourself in the mirror and you sort of like go, yeah, I'm not real happy with what I'm seeing. And then you start to make excuses, but your legs are broken or whatever, blah, 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 blah. You always find an excuse. You find an excuse, but the reality is you still look like shit. You're still a chub, and you need to do something about it. Now, you can make 1,000 excuses on why it is, or you can just do something about it. So sport, when I got involved back in sport, I found something I liked, and don't get me wrong, it didn't just fall into my lap, on the first day. It took a bit of time for me to find out where my little, my niche was, and that was in the recumbent cycling stuff. And I'd done some snow stuff that I really, really enjoyed. So the seated snow ski. So I dabbled in. I started to sort of get a feel for it, and then I tried to get involved in more stuff, and I did. And some of it was really successful, and the other I just found boring. But once my path was in motion, I wanted more of it. And I suppose I was really, really lucky, in the Invictus space. I got to be a co-captain there with Emma Kajolka for the team in Canada. I picked up a couple of medals in my preferred sport. So it was great. I suppose it gave me some credibility into me, and then into it. Then different organisations wanted me to be a part of what they were a part of, either like Pain Australia, talking about pain and how I deal with that, and how I the sporting aspect of it fixes it. So it interlocked into lots of different other stuff. So it created more opportunities, and then I've continued on with the defence sports cell in the Invictus space. And still been involved in there. So I still get to be around. I get to mentor the other guys. I get to stay in the sports arena. I get to challenge the other guys in the sports of my choice sort of stuff, or my chosen sports. So it's very much part of the life. After I left competing in that space, I trained with Matty Brumby, the current world champion in Ironman, for para Ironman. So we trained together, and he went on to win that. So now, idiot me decided to do an Ironman myself. So I've signed up to do Ironman in Busselton on December 4th in WA. So that's keeping me challenged as well. So keep finding the target, keep going after a target. So you're not just sitting around and just training. Give yourself a purpose. Give yourself something to do at the end of it.
So Pete, for you and other veterans, do you feel that Invictus gives purpose again? Like it gives them something to aspire again? Because a lot of veterans, and a lot, you've spoken to a lot yourself, do they lose their sense of purpose when they discharge from the military? What does Invictus give them?
Mate, that's the thing I like about Invictus. It gives you plenty. We're at a time where I wasn't really ready to let go of defence, but I couldn't go in, go to and do defence stuff. And Invictus bridged that little gap for me, prior to discharge, with still, being around Army, Navy, Air Force, or like-minded people, still being in a chain of command, I suppose, as well. There's some really good people around. It also, it brought back that competitive edge in me as well. I didn't want to turn up and just be, the token tard who wandered around. I wanted to be the bastard who won. So I really went after that. I wanted to win. I wanted as much challenge as that I could find. Again, throughout the whole process, it's still, at the end of the day, it's military. It's the defence sports cell that run it all. So you are still in a chain of command, and you are with like-minded people who are trying to achieve the same thing. And for a lot of those guys and girls who are probably in the darker places and still not understanding their transition, Invictus is a really good thing for it. They just have to be mindful of, there are certain behaviours in the defence space. And if your behaviour has become toxic, you're at risk of, being toxic to the people around you, and therefore, transfer of toxicity. So that's not a good one, and never ends well. So it's a great place to be, which will help across that arena.
So for you, Pete, you've won gold medals. What do they mean to you? What do the medals mean to you? And have you got a favourite gold medal?
Yes, definitely. I gave it away. So the first one wasn't about me winning a gold medal. It was about me showing that, from the injuries that I'd had, that I still had value. And that not just that I had value, that the rest of us, who were broken, and I mean severely broken, not just, I had my little finger one day. I mean, like proper broken. You can come back and do, and, and challenge it, to go after it, to go from being the worst to the best. I came dead last the first year I was in the race and won the next one. So I rang Brendan Nelson up and said, when he was the director of the War Memorial, I said, "You want this thing? This was never about me. It was always, about the bigger picture." And he said, "Bloody oath." So I donated that to the War Memorial. I was really lucky because I rang up that night and I said, "You can have the medal, mate." He's like, "Yeah, beauty, Pete. I'll grab it off you when you get home. We'll do a little presentation, blah, blah, blah." And the next day I went out and won another one. So even though I was going to give the first one away, I got to keep the second one, which is actually that one there. So I kept that one. The first one was the really the big one, I suppose, that set, the pathway. The second one was really validating, and at least I got to keep it. And then the third one was for rugby one. And so those two there are individual ones. And the rugby one was a team one. And the team one was 2 years that it took to build that team, with a huge dynamic of people within the team, some absolutely fantastic individuals, who really did well out of sport, to some people who really won't do that well out of sport and are still, well and truly on their journey. I'm not saying they're dicks. I'm just saying that, that they're not at their end state yet, or, or on that pathway. And I just wanted to clarify that. So because of the team collaboration and how much went into it, and the fact that it was in front of, it was in Sydney, in front of a huge, big crowd, Australians just doing what we do best. I love that one in the sense of, there's such a, so much packed into it, into that, accomplishment of the medal.
So how often is the Invictus Games, Pete? And when are they on?
So it's every couple of years, except with the COVID thing sort of stuffed that up. So, 2020 was supposed to be, so we had 2018, then we're supposed to have 2020 Netherlands, 2022 was Germany, but, then it sort of got pushed back. So 22 was the Netherlands. So Germany will be next year in Dusseldorf. So that'll be in October of next year. So that'll be, 16 months between the two. And then it'll push back out to 25 for Canada. So every 2 years.
So are you still involved in that as well, Pete? Like, you're still part of the team that goes and does all, so what's the role that you play with Invictus now?
So I'm on staff, and I look after all of the equipment that we have. So, see, in Canberra, we have a storeroom there. We have all of our wheelchairs, all our bikes, everything like that. I look after all of that sort of stuff. For guys who make the team, I, issue kit to them so they can continue to practice in their own place. And then when they have competition stuff, I'm there to facilitate all the competition stuff with the equipment. Plus, handle all that equipment to go away with and ensure that it comes back the way that it does. So basically QE stuff.
So do you rely on fundraising, or how's it work, Pete?
So Defence pay for the still serving. Invictus Australia pay for the veterans. So it's a collaboration between Invictus Australia and Defence. There's supposed to be a 50-50 team sort of selection, but it doesn't sort of work that way. There's generally more veterans than what there is serving. The Defence Sports Cell are their overall leadership for it. So it's the collaboration between the two, with Defence in the leadership role, make it all happen.
Because I've known so many veterans that have gone to Invictus, and one very well, and she's now my coach, Sarah Watson.
There's a name there.
Oh, there you go. There you go. And it's something that I've always been interested in, how it's funded, how it works. And so who better to speak to than you, and talk about it, because, and it's good for the listener to know the programs that are out there as well. So I thought I'd ask you, mate. That's why I asked. So
on that one, then I'll expand a little bit more, because so I'm in the RSL space now as an ambassador. But one of the projects that so the CEO RSL Australia, which is Phil Winter, that's really, he's really going after is, and again, he's, DG Invictus, the Director General Invictus, and ADF Sport. But Phil's really gone after RSL Active, and that's about getting veterans into the space, but and providing opportunities for a whole range of sports for all different age groups. So we really want to try to create something there that people can come, because, only through the Invictus side of things, I suppose, what the team's going to be only 30-something for Germany. With the more countries that come in, the less spots that are available. So, less and less people are going to get to go. So, we need to have something out there that's everywhere where people can get into it, and that goes right down to, we have groups on Strava for those of us who ride bikes, to see who clocks up the most clicks each week. And, annually there'll be prizes for, different stuff and so on. So, trying to keep everybody interested and engaged. Because it's one thing, to come and, train up for the Invictus Games. If you don't get in, guys might get disgruntled and stop training. We don't want that, because, again, not everybody can get in. But also, people who have been on Invictus and done well for Invictus, if they stop after Invictus, the whole thing's really been pointless. It's only been, a period of good health, both physically and mentally. We want that to be ongoing. It needs to be enduring. These are only platforms into changing lifestyle. And that should be everybody's goal, get into it for whatever reason. If you want to train for health, or if you want to train to compete, or you want to train to be, with like-minded people, as in lifestyle. But we need to continue it. It must have that continuation. Otherwise, it's just pointless.
So how do people get in? How do veterans get involved, Pete? If they want to, say they want to come and go to Invictus, what's the process?
So, in the veteran space, go to the RSL website. We'll have the list of the EOIs, so the expression of interest for Invictus, and you fill out an EOI and send that in. You can go to Invictus Australia, same, they'll have it there. And you can even go to the Defence website, and it should be there. Just put in Invictus EOI, and you should be able to find an application there, fill it out.
So you just mentioned that you become an ambassador for RSL. How did this come about for you, Pete?
So the ambassadorship stuff was a direct invitation from Phil Winter. So Phil took up the position as CEO at RSL National, or Australia, then National. It's had a name change. So Phil took up the position, and Phil and I had got along very well within the defence sports cells type of stuff. And he said, I'd like to keep you in this space. But he and I also think that you have something to value add to RSL as a whole. Because we'd sort of worked so well together, I accepted his invitation, and to be honest, I've absolutely loved it ever since. So
the role that you have now as an ambassador, do you go right around the country talking to RSL? So how's it work, Pete?
Mate, to be honest, I do a bit of everything. It's really been quite overwhelming. So I get a lot of invitations to talk to different groups, generally defence-related groups. Then that expanded to some of the COs of the units had asked me to go and talk. So I spoke to 6AV, which was amazing. That was really great. I enjoyed that. Last week I spoke to 3RAR, to the junior NCOs at 3RAR. Been invited by 176 for stuff coming up and that. So there's plenty of that sort of stuff going on, various veterans courses and groups and stuff that's being run. And I mainly talk about resilience. So I get invited under the side of resilience because a lot of people say, why do I have so much resilience about it, with all the things that sort of went pear-shaped in my life. But I don't see them as negative. I see that myself have been very lucky to be given opportunity. So they want to hear that story. And then I talk about, a lot of the time I get asked about, how I think that guys and girls can change, the way their transitions are taking place and what happens after transition and that. And I'm very much a believer in, so you've got to have something when you leave to go to that gives you joy. Now that could be, bloody going down to the pony club, or that can be, going to the darts club or going to the RSL. You've got to have something. And why I sort of like that one is because the RSL, for example, has, some good funding across a whole lot of projects. It has bricks and mortar, it has money. They're in every town. If you don't like something, you can change it by getting involved in things. You can get more and more like-minded people in, and you can affect change. There's opportunity. There's so much opportunity there, and no other organisation does that. And most importantly, like-minded people. Once we get out, if we stay around people who are like-minded, it's so much better for our mental health. So I get to talk across different organisations with that. RSL was making me ambassador. It gave me that opportunity to be able to say that to a lot more people, in different clubs and different places around Australia. Plus, I was also asked to be strongly involved with the Royal Commission and have my bit in that space as well, which I was really excited about having because. So I mentioned about my grandfather and my grandmother adopting me as a child. My grandfather was a defence suicide, but he was dying anyway. But he took his own life before that happened, his journey through that wasn't good, and very impacting on the family and all of that sort of stuff. So, having that background and then. Listening to the stories, the lived experiences in the Royal Commission, plus, just general experiences across. Again, I thought I had something to value add there, and it was really good to be able to sit there and listen to those stories and understand how they fit and meld together to tell a bigger story. And I was so pleased that RSL thought that I was the person to do the media stuff, to give the examples, to represent 150,000 members, and to be able to share those experiences. So it was cool. I suppose the big thing is I was really glad that RSL seen value in what I had to offer.
So, how does the future of the RSL look like, Pete? And what role do younger veterans have in continuing to support return servicemen and women? And is there a big problem at the moment with younger veterans coming into the space, Pete?
And that question's like this is huge, but bloody. So I'll give you this food for thought, right? So the RSL was, first formed up in 1921. They had their first meetings in 1919 and 1921. They get into it and they say, what do we need? What does this organisation need to do? So, a couple of key things there. It had to be a place where veterans could go to get together and talk freely. The guys have just come out of the biggest bloody war of all times. They've experienced something that nobody else has experienced. Right? They can't go back to their wives and families and talk about that. On the other side of things, those wives got the struggles of being married to a dude who's been away for the last, 4 years in some cases, sort of thing, and the complexities around that. So they need like-minded people to talk to and keep for their own bloody sanity and also to learn. A lot of children lost their fathers as well. So, again, the RSL provided a place where those families could get together, like-minded kids, talk to others and so on. So it was a necessity that they created, is where I'm going with it. Come World War II, World War I veterans were saying to World War II, you guys weren't in a war. We were in a bigger war than you. Your war wasn't as big as ours, and because, they're talking to their sons. In many cases, they're talking to their sons. So I remember you in nappies, you prick. Now you just come back from a war, you think you're killing it, learn your place. So the World War II guys were going, great, thanks. I really needed to feel like that. So all of a sudden, Korea comes on, same thing. World War II guys say, what? More people were killed in a day than what were killed in your war. Learn your place. So they felt that, Then goes down to, Vietnam veterans, which in, again, many cases, their dads were World War II veterans. World War II guys were saying to them, right, you lost 496 guys in 10 years of war, count some civilians, 501. We lost that in 10 minutes of a battle, So, everybody is constantly in the next one, and everybody's standing over the top of it. The Vietnam veterans, like us younger guys, we sit there and go, oh, bloody Vietnam veterans won't get out of the way, they're crusty old fellas. Well, it's the same thing. They had that. They're our dads, the Vietnam veterans in many cases and that sort of stuff, So, again, they say, I remember when you were in nappies, and now you're a warfighter, learn your place. So we've been saying that since the dawn of time. The next people who come to run the RSL are the sons of the fathers, so it's continuing on. Now, the only way the RSL can go forward is if young veterans come forward. That is the only way. Otherwise, it will fail. It must fail, if it doesn't, because we won't have any membership. Now, in time, all of those other groups found their leadership positions in the RSL and put it on their path. And not just the RSL, any organisation, that's been around for a while, legacy and, and so on. So at some stage, and again, at 20 years old, did I want to be in the RSL? No. At 30 years old, did I want to be in the RSL? No. And it wasn't until I got into my 40s and I thought, you know what? I see the value of this organisation. I see the value of an organisation that has funding, bricks and mortar, and people. So as the next group of, the younger guys to me, once they realise that, it's not a bad place, it's a place that is there for us, that it's only there for us. It's not there for anything else. It is there for us. It does, advocacy. It does, it does sporting stuff. It gives us somewhere to drink. It runs every Anzac Day. Imagine if Anzac wasn't there, if RSL was there, who'd run Anzac Day? Nobody. Government wouldn't. All of this shit happens because this organisation makes it happen. And I think in the due course of time, the veterans understand one by one. We notice it as we go along. We understand that this is the organisation that fundamentally does everything for us, right? It is there for us. So if we let it fall, we will fall. So we've got to have a part of it, and it'll own its place. We, like all organisations, must learn to modernise, and we must learn the way that our next generations thinks for us to thrive. And I do honestly believe that the organisation is learning it and will learn it.
Do you feel that the younger veterans want to come in and change too much with they want to change it too quickly, or what's there seems to be such a big, like, you speak to young veterans and they go, nah, not interested, don't want to be part of it. So what is it, Pete? What's the problem?
Mate, there is the thing of wanting to change too much too quickly. Like I said, we all got to learn our place as we go along. We do live in a time where everybody's really entitled and they want change right now. And if I don't get it right now, I'm not having it, So we do have a bit of that. But, and again, a young veteran, 25-year-old guy or a 30-year-old guy, does he want to join the RSL? He's got so much out there to do. There's so much out there for him to do. So I get it. It's probably not the right place. Like I said, it wasn't the right place for me at that age. It's just that as we change, and I suppose, we become parents. We look at the way our values are and how they've changed over time. Myself, I look at, defence space on how I can and help more people in the space. And is that from me, sitting at home doing nothing? No. Is it from getting out and being the RSL and maybe getting some guys to come into it? I think that's better. Now, I could have chosen legacy, which I've always been a massive supporter of legacy and always will, being a legacy kid. But I chose RSL to be that space for me. Again, I think as we get older, those values change, and the importance that we place on the people around us change as well. Does a 25-year-old give a shit really about, the next 25-year-old or where he's going drinking and partying and all that sort of stuff? And you can't blame him because, again, we were all like that. But, when you get older and, you have those established families and boundaries and all that sort of stuff, you do look at opportunities and how you can help others. And I think, in the veterans space, a lot of us seem to find our way to the RSL. To be honest, it can be only a good thing. If you turn up and you don't like something and, there's people there that you don't like, again, the beauty is you can change that by numbers. Get your mates together, get them around, do the right vote, and then make the change. And the big one, like, going back to you said, about wanting to have change right now. I get that all the time. As an ambassador, I get people ringing me, I want this to happen, and I've got the greatest idea in the history of mankind that'll save thousands of lives, but I need it now. And I'm like, no, but you don't need it now. I get it. You've got a great idea and you want to implement it. Sit down, draw it up, plan it, see how you want to go. If it's a great idea, bring it up to your sub branch. But I'm not a member of the sub branch, and you're asking them for money. Again, you've got to have some sort of realistic expectation and that of yourself. But be involved in an organisation, make change through great ideas and being a part of something bigger than yourself.
And I think, Pete, a good point to touch on too is enjoy the process. Get involved and enjoy the process. Don't just pull back the expectations just a little bit and just enjoy the process of working to change it. And it gives you a purpose again.
I had a lady the other day, and she sort of had a go at me, saying, "Oh, you get given everything, Pete. You get given everything." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And I've always said, I get stuff, but I get stuff by getting out and being involved and making opportunity and create. And that's what I have said in the media before. It is about making opportunity and being involved. And she's like, "Oh, you get stuff, I get nothing." And I said, "But what have you done to get something?" "Oh, I went to the RSL once. I didn't fit in." "Well, if you didn't fit in, go to another one." That's the beauty of it. There's one down the road. And, and of course I said to her, I said, "Darling, if you're not getting into, half a dozen RSLs and you don't fit in, okay, you don't fit in. You don't have to go to the RSL. You can go to the football club, or you can go to the darts club, or you can go to the doll making club. You can go, there's so many places you can go. Don't be pissed with the RSL because you don't fit in. In this particular case, find what makes you happy." For some reason, people seem to think, that, the RSL's been rammed down their throat and, I don't fit in. And no, it's just a club like any others. And if you want to be a part of it, be a part of it. If you find value in it, be a part of that. But if you want something else and your values don't align, go to the club that your values align. I don't understand why people get so passionate and so upset about it. Find what makes you happy, go there.
But I look at it, Pete, and you did say, you've been given a lot of opportunity, but you've also worked bloody hard for it too, mate. And that's where a lot of people forget that if any success comes of, anything in life, you have to work at it. It's not just handed to you, mate. You work bloody hard at what you do, And that really annoys me too, with some people go, "Oh, for me, same thing. Oh, geez, you've got opportunity. You're meeting VC recipients, you're doing this." And I go, "Yeah, but you're not seeing the hours that I'm bloody doing that, I'm doing 16, 17 hours a week on the podcast for, getting your bios, getting all the veteran. I'm in a very privileged place and I'm honoured to do what I do, but it's hard work too. It's not, it doesn't just happen and you hit play and this is it. There's a lot involved, and I get the shits with that too when people say, "Oh geez," and I get the shits for that for you, mate. You've worked hard. You with hard work creates opportunity. That's always been the way.
But yes, recently somebody had a whinge, and I was really quite shocked actually. They someone said, "Oh, the money I get from RSL, and I was like, I don't get money from RSL. I'm an ambassador. I do this for free. If anything, this costs me money. The amount of times, I drive to places and I don't claim it or all that sort of stuff. But so there's that cost. There's the personal cost, but the cost of my family. So if I do something on a Monday or a Friday, I have to pay for the childcare. Nobody else is going to pay that. Because my daughter goes to daycare on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. My son goes to school, each day. So I'm up for that. The childcare type of things, but not to mention the time, for the Royal Commission stuff, I'm not being paid for it. I don't get to see my kids. I don't get to see my wife. There's a continual cost in my time, and has a flow-on effect to the things that I'm doing around the farm. I've been building a bloody horse stable for so long, it's not funny because I'm always away and I'm always doing something. But again, I love doing it, and I, it's my choice to pay that cost, and I understand it and fully take that on board. But it's, it's not like I'm getting paid for everything, and I'm all compensated. Well, I'm not. I'm doing it because I love to do it. I love to be in the veteran space, and I want to look after our people. And I accept that has a toll on my family, and my family and I deal with that. But to have somebody sit there and then say, I do it for money, I was like, bash that right up your ring here. Don't speak when you don't know the answer to what you're saying. It really annoyed me that I was just doing stuff for money, because money has zero part in it.
And mate, you've said it, like you said, you do it because you want to help people, and you want the change to happen, and we need more people like you, Pete, that are out there making the change happen, because if there's not people out doing the work, it's never going to change. It's exactly what you said. It's never going to change, and you do it because you want to do it. It's something that you want to help in the space, mate. Hats off to you, mate. Utmost respect to what you do, mate. And you're right. The toll is the cost to your family, the family time, and that's exactly what it is. But, mate, you mentioned that the Royal Commission, and for you, Pete, and other veterans, what outcome do you hope that the Royal Commission brings for?
Well, simply the first outcome, and always should be the first one, is to reduce, veteran and bloody serving suicide. That's got to be the first thing. But the big picture, though, I would like to see us in an organisation where things are far more simple for veterans to seek help. That the processing of stuff is made easier. I think, DBA, would probably get more streamlined. I would like to see, the ESO the ESO space cleaned up. 2,600 ESOs. My God, and then you hear all these, ridiculous stories of, CEOs being paid $200,000 and, they're not achieving anything for the year. And I used to think that was a joke, but now I'm actually starting to see that there's some validity in it. Some of these organisations accomplish very little. And I have concerns in that. I do want to see a much more structured, organised ESO space. I want to see a really, really big one that I am happy that, RSL and Legacy and War Widows and that are all jumped on board, which is a catalogue of services space. So, the construction of website that you can go to as a veteran and find what you're looking for. Right now, where do you start? I don't know how to start. And I did this bloody job for 28 years. I was, legacy kid my whole life. And then, in the RSL space after leaving the fence, I still don't know where to bloody look. So if I don't know, how the hell can anybody else know where to find help in whatever they're doing? The catalogue of services stuff should provide one space for you to be able to log onto there. And, if it's sport, go there. If it's, advocacy, go here, boom, 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 boom. It should be all there. And I think that's got to make it so much easier in our space. And the other thing I'd like to see, I'd love to see our culture change out of the Royal Commission, where we stop calling each other out all the bloody time. Every veteran I speak to, and it's a recurring theme now. People say, every time someone says that they're a veteran, they spend the first 10 minutes trying to work out if they're telling bullshit or not. We got to get it. We really got to get rid of this space. And, guys, one, we've got to stop bullshitting. And two, we've just got to become a bit more of a user-friendly, group of people where we show respect to each other. When we wore a uniform, we showed plenty of respect to each other. We respected the rank and we respected the uniform, and it was all good. When you walked into a unit you weren't a part of, you had a smile on your dial, you shook a hand, or two, and you were respectful. For some reason, once we get out, all we want to do is just call each other out and speak like shit to each other. And it's got to stop. We've got to get to the stage, be respectful of each other in the sense that what we all did was important and it had value and it had merit, and we all chose to do something and we were a different shade of green, right?
It's, Pete, I'm sorry to cut you off. It's something that I see with veterans, that you can be so kind towards each other, and then you can be so cruel towards each other too. And it's you're right. It's so, like, you've served your country. You've all served your country. You've signed on the dotted line, and you've you've signed to that, you've given your life, and you've signed a blank check, which could lead to, giving your life and paying the ultimate sacrifice. When you all come back, and this is just my thoughts, just get along and respect. You've served your country, like you've done military service, like that's enough in itself to go, mate. I want to buy you a beer, Pete. Like, let's sit down and let's have a beer and stop attacking each other. And mate, that's just my thoughts of it, Pete. That it's you can be so kind towards each other, but then you can also be very cruel towards each other as well.
Yeah, oh, it's toxic. And I mean, you just got to get on half this stuff across social media. With dudes slaying each other, and like it goes both ways. Some of the ridiculous things that some veterans say. Just it's bullshit. Some of the bullshit that they say, which was very hard to say with my daughter fidgeting around behind me. But, it is really bad. And people have got to stop that exaggeration stuff or just randomly making stuff up. Please keep your noise. I don't care. Go away, please. Really? Oh, my God, bro. Yeah, like one, the bullshit's got to stop. Just say what you did in your career. Be proud of what you did, regardless of what you did. So that's one. And the other one is, guys calling everybody out all the time. My career was better than your career and all this sort of stuff, because that's bullshit. And again, we all have our jobs. We all, the ratio we work on is 9-1 as far as, infantry to support. All of the people who support the infantry, without them, it wouldn't happen. So everybody is important. Everybody has their place. This attitude of I'm better than you has got to stop. The whole lot of it's got to stop. We just, again, you would think that our organisation, when you come across another one of us, another guy who was in army, right? And we're in a pub and we're at the back of Burke. We've never met before. We sat down in the pub, and dude says, "Oh, I used to be in the army." And I say, "I used to be in the army." Now, the first thing we should do is shake hands, say, "Oh, cool, man, where were you posted?" Blah blah blah, and have a beer, and we get along as friends. We have something in common. We chose to do the same thing. We represented our country. We, all of that sort of stuff, all that stuff that brings us together. But for some reason, that most people seem to use that as a thing to get in each other's space. We're just not getting it. And if we're gonna, look for better mental health across our space, it's got to start with treating each other with respect.
Mate, I'm nodding across from you on the screen. Just absolutely, it's pretty simple, Pete. We're all adults, and I'm, as I said to you, Pete, I'm not a veteran, so I'm just a volunteer firey but I'm agreeing with you that we're all adults. If we can't meet in a pub and go, well, Pete, I served in the army, you served in the army, well, I want to buy you a beer, mate. Well done, and let's talk about, let's talk about the good days of, you were in this unit. Oh, right, I was in that unit. And yeah, it's just the old simple word of respect. That's, I was taught it, you were taught it, that, just respect each other. And I think the world would be a better place if there was, but respect, your wife, she knows respect these days, it's not there. It's not there anymore, Pete. It's something that has gone to the wayside, and some of the old, and, Pete, I'm only 30, but I was brought up by parents that, instilled values in me, that the old values, respect each other, be kind, be compassionate. Like, some of those values have disappeared now. They, and be nice. Like, just, please, thank you. Those seem to have gone to the wayside now, and it's a shame. But anyway, we could go down a rabbit warren and but Pete, what are your plans going forward in the future? What interests have you got going forward with you and not just for the family, and what interests do you have going forward?
I'll stay in the Invictus space as much as I can until until I'm not required there anymore. So I'll stay there. I will well and truly stay in the RSL space whilst I think that it's appropriate there. I would like to probably get back into the legacy space a little bit. I've always felt that I've owed legacy something because of, how fantastic they were for me as a child, because I wouldn't be the man that I am today without my contacts in legacy and what legacy did for me. But I'm very focused on around being a good father, and looking after my two kids that are in Perth, and also, my two here, my little ones. Talon is 8 and Elkie is 5, so I pretty much pay the home dad thing there. With Tam going to work, I'm the primary parent sort of things, and which I love. I would never ever change for anything. It's amazing to have this opportunity to have my other kids that have grown up and gone down that path, and now to be back as a primary parent, or not back as a primary parent, but be a primary parent to these two, which is great. I'm really focused on doing stuff around my property and finding my little happy space amongst doing my ESO space and my family stuff. I have I was going to say I have a few more things that I want to do in the mental health space, and contribute to there, and I do, and I want to sort of evolve that. I just got to think of the best way to put that forward on how we can do that, and I need a bit of a collaboration. Really big on the sporting stuff. So the Ironman for me will be a big one. To do an Ironman I'll be 51 when I go to WA. So hopefully I won't have a heart attack in the water. No, I'm really excited about doing that. No, we'll see how, after such a long event, how I come out of that. And then I'll look at how I reshape that into my next physical goal that I want to undertake, because I'm big about, having, ongoing physical goals and seeing how to shape that one into something bigger.
So, Pete, if you could go back, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self, and would you change anything?
So I'll do the change thing first. The obvious ones, I lost a couple of soldiers away, and I've certainly lost a lot of friends over the years. I would certainly change, what happened to them. Timmy and Ben and Scott come back, and Mason and all that sort of stuff, and to see their families, hug their sons again and all that sort of stuff. They're the obvious ones. That bring guys back. So that's that one. The things for change for myself, though, I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change the failure of my first marriage. I wouldn't change the Black Hawk crash for me. I wouldn't change anything, because all of those things that I've done, I wouldn't change the parents that I had, or have all, contributed to make me the man that I am today. And I'm not a, perfect man or anything by that sense or anything. I just think that the experience have made me a stronger, I like to think a decent, caring human being. And without all of those experiences, I wouldn't be the person I am today for the father that I wish to be for my children. So for me, not a damn thing, change nothing. Just would like to save a few people along the way. The advice as a young man to I suppose an older man now in the prime of his life, or the other way around, an old man giving the young man the advice. Sorry, but I would always say something along the lines of never worry about it too much. It is what it is. Be proud of who you are, make the decisions as long as they're decent and moral ones, continue to make them, learn by your mistakes. Everything will be all right in the long run. Can't really go too far wrong if you keep moving forward. That's it. There's no really divine wisdom there. It's just about keep rolling forward and keep taking the hits. I suppose the big one I thought about recently is, I really hate the term everybody says you've got to go through the journey of life and all that sort of stuff. And that's what makes us stronger and all that sort of stuff. Now, people can go through the journey of life and their life can be shit, right? The journey is shit, or they can just have the same thing day after day, day after day. The journey doesn't give us strength or resilience or anything like that, because you've got to learn from the journey. It's the amount of time you pick yourself up is where you get resilience and strength. It's continuing to pick yourself up after the fall. So it's, embrace the fall a lot, pick yourself up after it, get stronger and stronger. Don't just walk the journey.
It's something, Pete, that I've learnt myself too, is that I always hated the term, I have something to fall back on. Well, for me, I want to fall forward because I want to see what's coming. I don't want to fall back. I've always hated that saying of, I have something to fall back on. Well, you can't see what's behind you. You only can see what's in front of you. And that's something that I've embraced, Pete, through my journey, is I only want to fall forward now. And I want to keep moving forward and not falling forward, but moving forward, exactly what you're saying. But yeah, I've learnt too that, life is pretty hard, and there's the blows that come with it. But as you say, it's how resilient you can be, taking those hits to get back up and keep moving forward. And he's exactly right. But I think it's a really key point that you touch on, especially for the younger listeners too, Pete, that, they can take something away from that, and, they can learn to be more resilient and go forward in their own lives. But for you, Pete, looking back now, what are you most proud of about your military service?
Most proud of? When I was younger, I would have said, completing my SAS selection or something like that, or, doing this course or doing that course. So a few years ago, a soldier that I had a lot of time for, but he was just a good soldier. He was a good man, the type of guy that you'd want, within your command sort of thing. He rang me up and he said, "Geez, I miss you at work." And he goes, "Quite a few of the guys feel the same way as me." He goes, "It's been different since you left." And I said, "How's that?" And he goes, "Well, the new Bravo doesn't have the same sort of, leadership styles." And I thought, that's fine. He doesn't have to be the same. I said, "But, we always knew you looked after us. We always knew that you cared about us, and all that sort of stuff." So having one of my soldiers say that, that they missed me was great, but also that they felt that I cared about them, that I cared about their welfare and that I would help them and all that sort of stuff is probably the biggest thing. Because, you're making a difference to people, and hopefully you make a difference out of their own leadership styles as they come past, because they see those values and they reuse them. But, I suppose, being in defence isn't about, it's not about yelling at people and not about, getting ready for war and all the sort of bullshit. It's just that those fundamental parts of giving a shit about the people you work with and hopefully mentoring them to go into the next positions, mentoring them, for parts of their life and that. So in that case, it felt like, he valued what I did. And the other guys had thought the same that he was referring to. So that the takeaway was probably that feel good, that they'd got it, that I'd been a decent enough human being for that to want to have around some more.
No, it's Pete. It's definitely it's been an honour and a privilege to have you on, and all I can say from everyone who listens to this, firstly, thank you for your service to our country. Thank you for what you do for veterans, for first responders, with the RSL. It's been an absolute honour and a privilege to have you on True Blue History and share your story. So thank you for coming on True Blue History.
Thank you, Matt. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review for the podcast on whatever platform you get your podcasts. And if you feel like supporting us, you can now via our Patreon page. That's patreon.com/True Blue History, or buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/True Blue History, and check out our new website, truebluehistory.com, for more great content.